The Crixian warfleet dropped out of hyperspace like a swarm of angry wasps. 47 vessels, each one bristling with weapons that could crack open a moon. Admiral Vexnar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devourer of Worlds, and watched the tactical display with all 4 of his crimson eyes. "Status report," he growled, his voice like gravel scraping against metal. "All ships have arrived, Admiral," his second-in-command, Subcommander Torax, replied. "The human colony world designated Earth 7 lies directly ahead. Population approximately 2 million. No significant military presence detected." Vexnar allowed himself a smile, revealing rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. The Crixians had been hunting across the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had consumed countless species, stripped worlds bare, and built an empire on the bones of the weak. The humans were just the latest prey. "The Galactic Assembly warned us about the humans," Torax said carefully. "They suggested caution." "The Assembly is filled with cowards," Vexnar snapped. "These humans have been in space for barely 2 centuries. They have no great fleets, no planet-killing weapons, no ancient technology. They are prey, nothing more." Torax lowered his head in submission. "Of course, Admiral, your wisdom is beyond question." The Crixians had studied the humans carefully before launching this attack. They knew that human space was defended by a fleet of perhaps 100 warships, spread thin across dozens of colony worlds. Earth 7 was a farming colony on the edge of human territory. It should have been an easy target. "Launch the first wave of fighters," Vexnar commanded. "I want their orbital defenses destroyed within the hour. Then we begin the harvest." On the surface of Earth 7, alarms began to wail. Governor Maria Santos ran through the corridors of the Colonial Administration building, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been a colony administrator for 15 years, but nothing in her training had prepared her for this. "What is our defense status?" she demanded as she burst into the command center. Colonel James Wright stood before a wall of tactical displays, his face grim. He was a tall man with gray hair and the kind of calm that came from decades of military service. "2 orbital defense platforms, both outdated," Wright reported. "1 destroyer in orbit, the Nelson. She was here for a routine supply run. That's it, Governor." "1 destroyer against 47 warships," Santos said flatly. "That's not a fight, that's a massacre." "Yes, ma'am, but we have something else." Wright pulled up a new display. Before this colony was established, the Strategic Planning Division identified this system as a potential invasion target. They left us a gift. Santos stared at the display. "I don't understand. What am I looking at?" "The reason I was really sent here," Wright said. "I'm not just a colonial defense coordinator, Governor. I'm part of Operation Pitfall." Far above the planet, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the destroyer Nelson and watched the Crixian fleet approaching. Her ship was old, one of the first human warships ever built. It had been scheduled for decommissioning next year. "Captain," her weapons officer called out, "Crixian fighters are launching. Estimate 300 fighters inbound." "All hands, this is the captain," Vasquez spoke into the shipwide comm. "We're about to be attacked by overwhelming enemy forces. Our job is not to win this fight. Our job is to make them think they've already won. Stand by for Phase 1. The Nelson began to move, positioning itself between the orbital platforms and the incoming fighters. It was a gesture of defiance, but everyone on board knew the truth. 1 destroyer could not stop 300 fighters. "Open a channel to the Crixian flagship," Vasquez ordered. Admiral Vexnar was surprised when the communication request came through. Prey rarely tried to talk. Usually they just ran or screamed or begged. "Put them through," he said, curious despite himself. A human female appeared on his display. She had dark skin and darker eyes, and she showed no fear. "Crixian vessel, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth Defense Force destroyer Nelson. You are entering human space without authorization. I am ordering you to withdraw immediately." Vexnar laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Ordering us? Little human, you have one ship. I have 47. Your colony has no defenses worth mentioning. You are in no position to order anything." "I'm giving you a chance," Vasquez replied calmly. "Turn around now and you can leave. Continue your attack and you will regret it." "Regret?" Vexnar leaned forward, his 4 eyes gleaming with amusement. "What could you possibly do to make me regret anything?" "You'll see," Vasquez said and cut the channel. Vexnar dismissed the exchange from his mind. The humans were bluffing. They had to be. His tactical officers had scanned this entire system. There were no hidden fleets, no secret weapons, nothing but one old destroyer and 2 orbital platforms that predated human faster-than-light travel. "Continue the attack," he ordered. "I want that destroyer destroyed first. Show them what happens to prey that threatens a Crixian." The first wave of Crixian fighters swept toward the Nelson like a dark tide. They were fast and deadly, equipped with plasma weapons that could slice through hull plating like it was paper. Each fighter carried a pilot bred for combat, trained from birth to hunt and kill. The Nelson's point defense systems opened fire, filling space with a web of kinetic rounds and short-range missiles. Fighters died, exploding in brilliant flashes of light. But for every fighter that fell, 3 more took its place. "Shields at 60%, the tactical officer reported. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. We can't take much more of this, Captain." "Hold your position," Vasquez ordered. "We need to give them a show, make them confident." The Nelson shuddered as more plasma bolts struck her hull. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Somewhere in the distance, Vasquez could hear the screaming of metal as her ship began to die. "Shields failing, we need to withdraw." "Not yet," Vasquez said through gritted teeth. "Just a little longer." On the planet below, Governor Santos watched the battle on her tactical display. The Nelson was being torn apart, and there was nothing she could do to help. "When does Phase 2 begin?" she asked Wright. "When the Nelson falls back," Wright replied. "That's the signal." "Those people are dying up there." "Yes, ma'am, they're dying so that everyone else can live." Wright's voice was heavy. "That's what soldiers do." Santos looked at the colonel with new eyes. She had always thought of the military as an abstract thing, budgets and reports and strategic planning documents. Now she was watching men and women sacrifice themselves for strangers they would never meet. "Captain Vasquez knows the plan?" Santos asked. "She designed half of it," Wright said. "Before she was assigned to the Nelson, she spent 10 years in strategic planning. She knows exactly what she's doing." On the bridge of the Nelson, Vasquez watched her ship die around her. Half her crew was already dead. The other half wouldn't last much longer. "Engineering, can you give me 1 more minute of shields?" "I can give you 30 seconds, Captain, maybe." "That'll have to be enough." Vasquez opened the ship-wide comm one last time. "All hands prepare to abandon ship. Get to the escape pods and head for the planet. The Crixians will be too busy to chase you." "Too busy doing what, Captain?" someone asked. Vasquez smiled grimly. "Too busy dying." She waited until the last possible moment, until her shields were completely gone and the hull breaches were spreading like cracks in ice. Then she gave the order. "All hands abandon ship, fall back to Phase 2 positions, and tell the Crixians." She paused, watching the escape pods launch from her dying vessel. "Tell them this was just the beginning." The Nelson exploded in a ball of fire and debris. Admiral Vexnar watched from his flagship and felt a surge of satisfaction. "The destroyer is destroyed," Tarax reported. "Orbital platforms are falling back. The way is clear." "Excellent," Vexnar said. "Begin the landing operation. I want troops on the ground within the hour." He had no way of knowing that he had just made the worst mistake of his life. The Crixian landing force consisted of 12 troop transports, each carrying 5,000 warriors. They descended through Earth-7's atmosphere in a neat formation, following standard invasion protocols that had worked on 100 different worlds. Colonel Wright watched their descent from the underground command bunker. He was smiling, which Governor Santos found disturbing. "You seem happy about being invaded," she said. "Not happy," Wright corrected. "Satisfied. They're doing exactly what we expected them to do." "And what did you expect them to do?" "Land their troops in the most tactically obvious location, the agricultural plains north of the colony." Wright pulled up a map on the display. "It's a perfect landing zone. Flat terrain, no obstacles, easy access to the colony. Any commander would choose it." "So we're defending the plains?" "No, ma'am. We mine the plains. 300,000 pressure-sensitive anti-armor mines buried 2 meters below the surface. The Crixians are about to land 60,000 soldiers on top of them." Santos felt her stomach lurch. "That's war," Wright said simply. "The Crixians have destroyed 17 intelligent species that we know of. They don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They hunt, they feed, and they move on. The only way to stop them is to make hunting us more expensive than it's worth." The first Crixian transport touched down on the agricultural plains. Its landing struts compressed the soil, and the entire ship vanished in a pillar of fire. Vexnar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. One of his transports had simply ceased to exist. "What happened?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. Analyzing now." Torex's claws clicked rapidly across his console. "It appears to be some kind of explosive device buried beneath the surface. We're detecting similar devices across the entire landing zone." "Mines, they mine their own farmland." "It appears so, Admiral." Vexnar felt a cold sensation in his stomach that he barely recognized. It had been so long since he'd experienced it that he had almost forgotten what it was called. "Fear. Redirect the remaining transports to secondary landing zones," he ordered, "and launch a full sensor sweep. I want to know what else these humans have hidden from us." But the humans were just getting started. As the Crixian transports scattered across the sky, searching for safe landing zones, they began to encounter other surprises. Surface-to-air missile batteries that had been hidden in farmhouses and barns, anti-aircraft guns disguised as water towers, electromagnetic pulse devices buried along every major road. 3 more transports went down before the Crixians managed to land their first troops, and even then, those troops found themselves in a nightmare. The colonists of Earth-7 were farmers, teachers, engineers, and merchants. They were not soldiers, but every single one of them had been trained in basic guerrilla warfare, and every single one of them had a weapon. The Crixian warriors advanced toward the colony in orderly formations, just as they had been trained. They were met by sniper fire from windows. Improvised explosives detonated under their feet. Buildings that appeared empty turned out to be filled with armed civilians who fought with a desperate fury that the Crixians had never encountered before. "This is not possible," Vexnar growled as he watched his casualties mount. "These are farmers. They should be running. They should be begging for mercy." "Admiral," Torex said carefully, "the humans do not appear to understand that they are supposed to be prey." On the ground, a Crixian warrior named Caxter led his squad through the streets of the main settlement. He was a veteran of 12 hunts, and he had never seen anything like this. A human male stepped out from behind a building, armed with nothing but a kitchen knife and a look of absolute determination. Caxter shot him down without thinking, but as the human fell, he pressed a button on a device in his hand. The building behind Caxter exploded, killing 3 members of his squad. "They're using themselves as triggers," Caxter reported to his commanders. "They know they're going to die and they don't care. They're taking us with them." Another human emerged from a doorway, this one an elderly female. She was carrying a baby in one arm and a homemade bomb in the other. "Run," she said to Caxter in accented Crixian. "Run while you still can." Then she threw the bomb. Caxter survived barely. Half his squad did not. As he lay in the rubble, bleeding from a dozen wounds, he found himself wondering if the Galactic Assembly had been right. Maybe the humans were more dangerous than they appeared. In space, Admiral Vexnar made a decision. The ground assault was failing. His warriors were dying by the hundreds, and they had not yet reached the colony's main administrative center. It was time to end this the old-fashioned way. "Order all ground forces to withdraw," he commanded. "We will bombard the colony from orbit." "Admiral, our warriors are still engaged with the enemy. If we bombard now, we will kill our own troops." "Then they will die with honor," Vexnar snarled. "I will not lose this hunt to a pack of farmers. Begin the bombardment immediately." The Crixian warships moved into position, their weapons charging. From his flagship, Vexnar watched with cold satisfaction. The humans had surprised him, he would admit that. But surprise only worked once. No amount of hidden mines or suicidal farmers could stop a planetary bombardment. "Admiral," Torax said suddenly, his voice strange. "We're detecting an anomaly." "What kind of anomaly?" "Gravitational fluctuations. Multiple sources. They're coming from—" Torax paused, checking his readings again. "They're coming from the asteroid belt." Vexnar turned to look at the tactical display. The system's asteroid belt was several hours away at normal speed. There was nothing there. His scouts had checked it thoroughly. But as he watched, the asteroids began to move. They weren't asteroids at all. They were ships. 43 ships, to be precise. They had been hiding among the rocks, their engines cold, their systems dark, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And that moment had arrived. "All ships emergency alert," Vexnar screamed. "We're under attack." But it was already too late. The human fleet had been waiting for hours, watching the Crixian assault unfold, calculating trajectories and firing solutions. They had positioned themselves perfectly, using the asteroids as cover and the planet's gravity well to mask their approach. The first missiles struck the Crixian fleet before the warning even finished sounding. Captain Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Thunder of Earth and watched his missiles fly true. 20 years of planning had led to this moment. 20 years of building ships in secret, training crews in hidden bases, developing weapons specifically designed to counter Crixian technology. The humans had known the Crixians were coming. They had known for 2 decades, and they had been preparing ever since. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," he spoke into the fleet-wide comm. "Execute Operation Pitfall. Show them what humanity is made of." The human ships emerged from the asteroid belt like wolves from the forest. They were smaller than the Crixian vessels, but they were faster and more maneuverable. More importantly, they were armed with weapons that the Crixians had never seen before. The first Crixian warship died when a concentrated beam of particles punched through its engine core. The second died when a cluster of self-guided missiles overwhelmed its point defense systems. The third died when 2 human destroyers caught it in a crossfire and tore it apart from both sides. "What is happening?" Vexnar demanded. "Where did these ships come from?" "Unknown, Admiral. We're detecting 43 enemy vessels." "No, wait, 47, 51. Torax's voice rose with each number. "Admiral, there are more ships emerging from the asteroid belt. 60, 70, 82 ships." The human fleet had been even larger than it appeared. Ships had been hidden in different parts of the asteroid belt, timing their attacks to create maximum confusion. Just when the Crixians thought they had counted all the enemy vessels, more would appear. It was a simple trick, psychologically speaking, but in the chaos of battle it was devastatingly effective. "Reform the fleet," Vexnar ordered. "All ships combat formation Delta, protect the flagship." But his fleet was scattered, caught off guard, still recovering from the shock of the unexpected attack. Some ships tried to respond, turning to face the human threat. Others panicked and tried to flee. Still others continued their bombardment of the planet, their commanders not yet understanding that the situation had changed. The humans exploited every gap in the Crixian formation. Small groups of ships would pounce on isolated vessels, destroying them before help could arrive. Larger squadrons engaged the remaining Crixian formations, keeping them busy while other ships maneuvered into flanking positions. It was not a battle, it was a hunt, and for the first time in 3,000 years the Crixians were the prey. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold from his tactical display, making small adjustments to the plan as opportunities arose. They had practiced this scenario hundreds of times in simulation. Every captain in his fleet knew exactly what to do. "The enemy flagship is attempting to withdraw," his tactical officer reported. "They're charging their hyperspace drives." "No escape," Chen said calmly. "Signal the Thunderbolt and the Lightning. Execute Maneuver 7. Two heavy cruisers broke away from their formations and accelerated toward the Crixian flagship. They weren't trying to destroy it, not yet. They were trying to get close enough to deploy a new weapon. The Crixians called it the Anchor. It was a gravitational manipulation device that could create a localized hyperspace disruption field. Any ship caught in the field when it tried to jump to hyperspace would be torn apart by the conflicting gravitational forces. The Thunderbolt and the Lightning took heavy fire as they approached the Devourer of Worlds. Both ships suffered severe damage. The Lightning lost her engines and began to drift, but the Thunderbolt got close enough. She launched the Anchor. Vexnar felt his ship shudder as the device attached itself to the hull. "What was that? What did they hit us with?" "Unknown device, Admiral. It appears to be some kind of gravitational anchor. Our hyperspace drives are—" Torex paused, his four eyes wide with something that looked very much like fear. "Our hyperspace drives are non-functional. We cannot jump." "Then we fight," Vexnar growled, but his voice had lost its confident edge. "All ships protect the flagship at all costs. We will not fall to these primitives." But his ships were falling. One by one, the Crixian vessels were being destroyed or disabled. The humans were not fighting like any enemy the Crixians had ever faced. They were not trying to capture ships or take prisoners. They were not trying to negotiate or force a surrender. They were simply killing, efficiently and relentlessly, like predators culling a herd. "Admiral, we have lost contact with the Claw of Vengeance. The Blood Hunter is reporting critical damage. The Night Terror is—" Torex stopped, his voice trailing off. "The Night Terror is gone. 20 ships down, then 30, then 40. The Devourer of Worlds was alone." Chen moved his flagship, the Thunder of Earth, into position directly in front of the Crixian vessel. The two ships faced each other across a few thousand kilometers of space, surrounded by debris and the bodies of the dead. "Open a channel," Chen ordered. Vexnar stared at the human admiral on his display. The human was old, with gray hair and weathered skin, but his eyes were sharp and cold. "Admiral Vexnar of the Crixian Empire," Chen said, "your fleet has been destroyed. Your ground forces have been neutralized. You have no escape and no hope of reinforcement. I am offering you one chance to surrender." Vexnar laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "Crixians do not surrender. We are the hunters, the predators, the masters of the galaxy. We do not bow to prey." "You were the hunters," Chen corrected. "You hunted species that could not fight back, species that had not learned to be dangerous. But humanity is different, Admiral. We have been hunting since before we came down from the trees. We are very, very good at it." "One battle proves nothing," Vexnar snarled. "The Empire will send more ships, 100 fleets, 1,000 fleets, until every human world is ashes and every human is food." "They can try," Chen said. "But I should tell you something, Admiral. Earth 7 was not an undefended colony. It was a trap. We knew you were coming. We have known for 20 years. We built this entire colony specifically to lure you here to a system where we could ambush you with overwhelming force." Vexnar felt the cold sensation in his stomach growing stronger. How could you know?" "Because we're not the primitive farmers you thought we were," Chen replied. "We have spies in your empire. We have analyzed your tactics. We have studied your weaknesses. And we have built our entire military strategy around exploiting those weaknesses." "You planned this," Vexnar whispered. "All of it. Every detail. The fake colony reports that made Earth-7 look vulnerable. The outdated defenses that made it seem like an easy target. The single destroyer that put up just enough of a fight to make you confident. The mines, the guerrilla attacks, the chaos that kept you distracted while our fleet got into position. All of it, Admiral. Every single moment of this battle has been planned." Vexnar was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the human ships first appeared. Why go to all this trouble? You could have simply avoided our territory. You could have hidden. You could have done what every other species does when they encounter us." "Because we're tired of hiding," Chen said. "Tired of running. Tired of watching species more advanced than us treat us like animals. The galaxy has decided that humans are prey, Admiral. Today, we're teaching them a different lesson." "What lesson?" Chen smiled, and there was something in that smile that made Vexnar's blood run cold. "That we are the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, and anyone who comes hunting for us will find out exactly what that means." The conversation ended. The thunder of Earth opened fire. The Devourer of Worlds did not survive long. On the surface of Earth-7, Governor Santos watched the final battle on her tactical display. The sky was filled with the burning debris of Crixian ships, falling like stars into the atmosphere. "It's over," Colonel Wright said. "The Crixian fleet has been completely destroyed." Santos sat down heavily in a chair. Her hands were shaking. "How many did we lose?" "On the ground, approximately 3,000 dead, twice that many wounded. In space, 12 ships destroyed, another 20 damaged. Total casualties will be in the tens of thousands." "Tens of thousands," Santos repeated. "All those people." "Would have been millions if we'd lost," Wright said. "The Crixians don't take prisoners, Governor. If they had won today, every human in this system would be dead. Instead, humanity just won its first major victory against an interstellar empire." Santos looked up at the sky, where the debris continued to fall like a meteor shower. "This isn't the end, is it?" "No, ma'am, this is just the beginning. The Crixian Empire won't forgive this defeat. They'll send more ships, more soldiers. The war is just starting." "But we won today." "We won today," Wright agreed. "And we'll keep winning as long as we need to. That's what Operation Pitfall was really about, Governor. Not just destroying one fleet, but sending a message to every species in the galaxy." "What message?" Wright smiled, the same cold smile that Admiral Chen had shown Vexnar. "Don't mess with humans." In the weeks that followed, the story of the Battle of Earth-7 spread across the galaxy. The Galactic Assembly, which had dismissed humanity as insignificant primitives, suddenly found itself very interested in the species that had destroyed a Crixian fleet. Captain Elena Vasquez, who had survived the destruction of the Nelson by escaping in a life pod, was promoted to admiral and given command of the newly formed human defense fleet. Colonel Wright was reassigned to strategic planning, where he began work on the next phase of humanity's defense strategy. Governor Santos remained on Earth-7, overseeing the reconstruction of her colony. The agricultural plains that had been turned into a minefield were slowly being restored, although she suspected they would never grow crops quite the same way again. And on human worlds across the galaxy, people celebrated. They had been told for 2 centuries that they were newcomers to the stars, insignificant and powerless compared to the ancient empires that ruled the galaxy. Now they knew the truth. They were survivors, they were fighters, they were human. And humanity was just getting started. The Crixian Empire sent no more fleets to human space. They were too busy dealing with the sudden rebellions that had broken out among the species they had conquered, species that had seen what humanity had done, and decided that perhaps the hunters were not invincible after all. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of that change. In the years that followed, other empires would try to test humanity's resolve. Other predators would come hunting, and every single one of them would learn the same lesson that Vexnar had learned in the final moments of his life. Humans were not prey. Humans were the most dangerous thing the galaxy had ever seen. And anyone who forgot that would be reminded in fire and blood. Because that was the human way, not to hide, not to run, not to surrender, but to fight and to win, no matter the cost. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, and it would never let anyone take it away. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same.